When billionaire Harrison Cole took his new girlfriend to the city's most exclusive restaurant, he expected a night of fine wine and easy conversation. He didn't expect a public humiliation, but when his date sneered at their server, "You're just a waitress," she never anticipated the 5-word reply that would not only silence the entire room, but would also make the most powerful man in the city stand up in pure, unadulterated shock. What did she say? And how did one woman in an apron hold the key to his entire empire? Stick around, because this is one story of hidden power you won't want to miss. The dining room at Aperture was a symphony of hushed wealth. Cutlery kissed porcelain with muted clicks. Conversations murmured like distant, respectful streams, and the lighting was expertly designed to make everyone look like a better version of themselves. It was a place where fortunes were made and unmade over seared scallops and 30-year-old scotch. And in the center of this opulent theater, Matilda Hayes moved with an economy of motion that bordered on invisibility. To the patrons, she was just part of the seamless service. Her dark hair was pulled back into a severe bun, her black uniform was pressed to a knife's edge, and her face was a mask of pleasant neutrality. An apron tied tightly around her waist was her uniform of perceived insignificance. But the apron was also a disguise. Matilda wasn't just a waitress. She wasn't even remotely a waitress. She was Dr. Matilda Hayes, a forensic accountant whose name was whispered with a mix of terror and reverence in boardrooms across the country. She was the woman corporations hired when millions or billions had vanished, and they needed a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, to find out where. She was currently working at Aperture, earning minimum wage plus tips, for one reason: Gavin Reed, the chief financial officer of Cole Dynamics. Reed, a man with a taste for $500 bottles of wine and a talent for complex shell corporations, ate at Aperture 3 times a week. Matilda had been serving him for 2, charting his habits, listening to his unguarded boasts, and logging every guest he entertained. Tonight, however, was not about Reed. Tonight, the big fish had arrived. At 8:02 p.m., the host stand parted for Harrison Cole, the CEO and founder of Cole Dynamics. He was a titan, a man whose picture was frequently on the cover of financial magazines, celebrated for his aggressive expansion and his current pet project, the $4 billion Phoenix Project, a revolutionary clean energy initiative. He looked tired, Matilda noted, the lines around his eyes deeper than in his press photos. On his arm was a woman who could not have been more different. Her name, as the reservation indicated, was Brenda Page. She was decades younger than Harrison, poured into a red dress that seemed to be screaming for attention in a room designed for whispers. She radiated a brittle, nervous energy, her eyes darting around, assessing the wealth of the other diners. Matilda was assigned their section. It was the break she had been waiting for, a chance to observe the man at the top of the food chain. "Good evening, Mr. Cole. Ms. Page. My name is Matilda, and I will be taking care of you this evening," she said, her voice smooth and unobtrusive. Harrison gave her a cursory, polite nod, his mind clearly 1,000 miles away, already lost in the wine list. Brenda, however, looked Matilda up and down with a slow, dismissive gaze. "Just water for now. Still, with no ice. And make sure the lemon is sliced, not wedged. I can't stand it when they get that wrong." "Of course, madam," Matilda replied, her expression unchanged. She retrieved the water, her mind clicking away. Harrison Cole seemed distracted, almost haunted. His focus was entirely on his tablet, scrolling through what looked like dense financial reports. Brenda, meanwhile, was focused entirely on herself, taking selfies with the restaurant's logo, blurred in the background. "Harrison, darling, put that away," Brenda pouted, placing a hand on his arm. We're supposed to be celebrating. Celebrating what, exactly? Harrison murmured, not looking up. The Phoenix Project is hemorrhaging cash, and Reed's numbers don't add up. We're 300 million in the red with no explanation. Brenda's face tightened. This was not the romantic, impressive talk she wanted from her billionaire boyfriend. Can't you just fire someone? You're Harrison Cole. Just fix it. It's not that simple, Brenda. Matilda returned to take their order. Brenda immediately became performative, pointing at items and demanding elaborate modifications. Matilda dutifully recorded every request, her mind filing away the interaction. Harrison Cole wasn't celebrating. He was stressed, and he was openly discussing a $300 million discrepancy with a woman who clearly had no understanding of it. This was sloppy, or desperate. As Matilda turned to leave, Brenda called her back. "Oh, and waitress." Matilda turned. "Yes, madam. This water, it's cold." "I said no ice. It tastes like it had ice in it. Take it back and bring me another, and try to get it right this time." Matilda inclined her head. "My apologies, madam. I will bring you a fresh glass." She walked away, feeling the woman's eyes on her back. Harrison Cole hadn't even noticed. He was rubbing his temples, his gaze fixed on the table. The apron felt a little heavier. It was a shield, but it was also a target for the kind of casual cruelty she had forgotten existed in these circles. She had spent so long in boardrooms where her words could bankrupt a company that she had forgotten what it felt like to be dismissed as nothing more than the hands carrying the tray. The first course arrived. Brenda complained the soup was lukewarm. Matilda apologized and had it replaced. The second course arrived. Brenda claimed her fish was overcooked, though she had already eaten half of it. Through it all, Matilda remained the consummate professional, polite, immediate, and utterly blank. But beneath the surface, the gears of Dr. Matilda Hayes were turning. The $300 million Harrison just mentioned. That was the exact number her clients on the board had hired her to find. They suspected Harrison Cole himself. But as Matilda watched him, saw the genuine stress etching itself onto his face, a new theory began to form. Harrison Cole wasn't the predator. He was the one being bled, and he didn't even know who was holding the knife. The main course was a disaster, though it had nothing to do with the kitchen. Harrison Cole had taken an urgent call, his voice low and tense. He stepped away from the table, walking toward the grand windows overlooking the city skyline, his back to the room. He was clearly agitated, pacing back and forth, one hand gesturing angrily in the air. Brenda was left alone at the table, stewing in neglect. She was the arm candy, and the arm had just walked away. She flagged Matilda down with an imperious snap of her fingers, a sound that cut through the restaurant's refined ambiance. "I need more wine," she demanded, holding her empty glass aloft. "Of course, madam." "The '09 Beaumont?" Matilda replied, referencing the expensive bottle Harrison had ordered. "No, not that one. He's busy. Just get me your best Chardonnay. A glass." "Right away." Matilda returned moments later with a perfectly chilled glass of Pouligny Montrachet. She set it down on the table with a steady hand. Brenda picked it up, took a sip, and her face contorted into a mask of theatrical disgust. "Oh, what is this?" "It's sour. It tastes cheap." "That is one of our finest selections, madam. It's quite high-rated." "I don't care what it's rated," Brenda sneered, her voice rising in pitch. "I care what I think, and I think it's swill. You probably just brought me the house wine, hoping I wouldn't notice." This was a classic power play. Matilda had seen it a dozen times. "I can assure you, madam, that is the Pouligny Montrachet. I would be happy to bring you the bottle to inspect." "Don't you talk back to me," Brenda hissed, her insecurity now turning venomous. She saw a few nearby tables glance over, and it only fueled her. She wanted to look like a woman who commanded respect, but she only knew how to command attention. "My apologies," Matilda said, her voice remaining perfectly level. "Would you like me to bring you something else?" "I want you to apologize for your attitude," Brenda said, her eyes narrowing. "You've been rude to me all night." "I have endeavored to provide the best possible service, madam." "Service? You call this service?" Brenda laughed, a short, ugly bark. "You're slow, you're inept, and this wine is disgusting. I'm not paying for it." "As you wish, madam. I will have it removed from your bill." Matilda reached for the glass, and that's when Brenda did it. Whether by accident or, as Matilda suspected, with subconscious intent, Brenda's hand spasmed. The glass tipped, sending a cascade of pale gold wine directly onto Matilda's pristine white shirt and black apron. The restaurant, already quiet, went utterly silent. Matilda froze, the cold liquid seeping through her clothes, clinging to her skin. She looked down at the large, spreading stain, then back up at Brenda. Brenda's face was a picture of mock horror, but her eyes were gleaming with triumph. "Oh my goodness, look what you made me do. You startled me, reaching like that. You are so clumsy." Matilda slowly picked up a napkin from the table and began to dab at her shirt. She said nothing. "Well, aren't you going to clean this up?" Brenda snapped. "This is a mess. You've ruined our dinner." At that moment, Harrison Cole returned to the table, his face grim from his phone call. He looked at the scene, the spilled wine, Matilda's drenched shirt, Brenda's indignant expression. "What happened here?" Harrison asked, his voice heavy with fatigue. "Harrison, thank God! This waitress, she's been horrible all night," Brenda cried, rushing to his side. "She brought me rancid wine, and when I told her about it, she got aggressive and knocked the glass right over. It's everywhere. It's a disaster." Harrison looked at Matilda. He was a man who solved billion-dollar problems, and he was now being forced to adjudicate a spilled glass of wine. He was angry, but not at Matilda. He was angry at the situation, at the $300 million, at the failing project, and Brenda was just the nearest target for his displaced frustration. "Just clean it up," he said to Matilda, his voice dismissive, "and bring us the check." He wanted it to be over. But Brenda wasn't finished. She felt the dismissal, and it enraged her. She needed to re-establish her dominance. She needed to prove to Harrison and to the room that she was the one in power. She turned to Matilda, who was quietly gathering the damp linen. "You should be fired," Brenda said, her voice loud enough for the entire section to hear. "People like you have no place working in a restaurant this fine. You have no class, no skills. You're a liability. What do you even do besides carry plates?" Matilda stood up straight, her face still impassive. But her eyes were different. They were no longer neutral. They were cold, analytical, and utterly devoid of fear. "You should apologize to me." "On your knees," Brenda continued, drunk on the perceived power. "You're probably just some failed actress or a dropout who couldn't handle a real job. Go get your manager. I want you gone." Matilda didn't move. She simply held Brenda's gaze. "What are you, deaf? Or just stupid?" Brenda's voice was a shrill weapon. "You're nothing. You're just a waitress." The final word hung in the air, thick and vile. Harrison Cole sighed, closing his eyes in embarrassment. "Brenda, that's enough. Just stop." "No, Harrison. She needs to learn her place." Matilda took a small, quiet breath. She placed the soiled napkin on her tray. The entire room was watching. The mask of the server fell away, and for the first time that night, Dr. Matilda Hayes was present at table 7. "My place," Matilda said, her voice no longer the servant's murmur, but a clear, crisp alto that cut through the silence. My place is not the issue here. She turned her gaze from Brenda to the billionaire beside her. What is an issue, Mr. Cole? She said, her tone suddenly academic. Is that I am Dr. Matilda Hayes, and your board hired me 3 weeks ago to find your missing 300 million. The room inhaled as one. Brenda's jaw dropped, her face slack with confusion. Harrison Cole's head snapped up. His eyes, moments before glazed with fatigue, were now razor-sharp. He stared at her, really looked at her, and the recognition dawned. He had seen her CV. He had been on the video call where the board approved her astronomical fee. He went pale. The blood drained from his face, leaving him a waxy, terrified grey. And then, slowly, mechanically, his body reacting before his mind could catch up, Harrison Cole stood up in shock. The silence in Aperture was no longer polite. It was absolute. The sound of Harrison Cole's chair scraping against the marble floor was like a gunshot. He was on his feet, his towering frame rigid, his eyes locked on the woman in the wine-stained apron. Brenda, still processing, let out a confused, high-pitched laugh. What? What did you say? A doctor? Harrison, she's crazy. She's delusional. Call security. Harrison didn't even look at her. He held up one hand, silencing her without a word. His entire world had just tilted on its axis. The anonymous, ghost-like auditor his board had insisted on hiring, the one known only as M. Hayes, was standing in front of him, smelling of Chardonnay and holding a serving tray. "Dr. Hayes," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. The name was correct. The timing was correct. The $300 million figure was correct. "In the flesh," Matilda said, her voice calm. She unclipped the Matilda name tag from her vest and placed it on the tray next to the soiled napkin. "Though I must say, Mr. Cole, your companion just critically failed the character assessment portion of my investigation." Brenda's face cycled through confusion, indignation, and finally, dawning, catastrophic horror. "Harrison, what is she talking about? Tell her she's lying. Tell me she's lying." Harrison's gaze was forensic. He was replaying the last hour, every interaction, every complaint Brenda had made, every moment of Matilda's unnerving calm. He saw it all now, not as a diner's inconvenience, but as an audit. He had been tested, and he had been found. Distracted. But Brenda? She had been found monstrous. "Ms. Page," Matilda continued, her tone as dry as a balance sheet. "For the record, the wine you claimed was sour was a 2017 Pouligny Montrachet, rated 94 points, retailing at 280 a bottle. Your complaint was, to use a technical term, baseless." "Harrison," Brenda pleaded, grabbing his arm. Harrison finally turned to her. His face was cold fury. He wasn't just angry at her. He was furious at his own blindness, at the fact that this woman's petty cruelty had just jeopardized his entire company. He had brought this liability into the war room without even knowing it. "Get your coat, Brenda," he said, his voice flat and dead. "What?" "No. Harrison, she's the one who should be leaving. She's a waitress." "She is Dr. Matilda Hayes," Harrison bit out, each word a chip of ice. "She is the single most important person I am scheduled to meet this quarter. And you. He couldn't even finish. The scale of the disaster was too large. He pulled his arm free from her grasp. "Get your coat and wait for me in the car. We are finished." "Finished? Finished what?" "You and I. We are finished. This dinner is finished. Your association with me is finished. Go. Now." The brutality of it shocked her, and the tears that sprang to her eyes were, for the first time, genuine. She had overplayed her hand so badly, she had knocked the whole table over. With a final venomous glare at Matilda, she grabbed her purse and stumbled away, her retreat followed by the silent, judgmental eyes of every patron in the restaurant. Harrison Cole stood alone at the table, facing the auditor who held his company's fate in her hands. He looked at her stained shirt. "Dr. Hayes, He fumbled for words. This was a man who commanded boardrooms, who faced down regulators, and he was utterly disarmed. "I am profoundly sorry for her behavior, for this." Matilda inclined her head. "Your apology is noted, Mr. Cole, though it wasn't you who threw the wine." "Please," he said, gesturing to a private dining room just off the main floor. "My office, my real office. Now, we need to talk." "I'm still on the clock, Mr. Cole," Matilda said, a flicker of dry humor in her eyes. "I will buy this restaurant for the next hour if I have to. You're off the clock. Please. Your findings. The $300 million you've been investigating. Me. My mandate is to find the discrepancy, Mr. Cole. Wherever it leads," Matilda said. She picked up her tray. "But first, I'm going to need a dry shirt." Harrison nodded, looking shaken. "Of course. Anything." "Manuel," he called to the maitre d', who had been watching with wide, terrified eyes. "Find Dr. Hayes whatever she needs. My private lounge. 5 minutes." "Yes, Mr. Cole. Right away, Mr. Cole." Matilda walked toward the staff area, her back straight. The apron was gone. As she passed the bar, she saw Gavin Reed's usual table. It was empty. Her real target hadn't even shown up, but she had just captured the king. She entered the staff locker room, a tiny, windowless space that smelled of bleach and old coffee. She pulled her locker open. Behind her spare, pressed uniform, she had a small, fireproof document bag. She took a moment, leaning against the metal, the adrenaline of the confrontation finally hitting her. The humiliation from Brenda was a pinprick. The look on Harrison Cole's face, that was power. He was scared, and a scared CEO was a CEO who would talk. She had come here to watch a CFO. She was leaving with the CEO. The investigation had just escalated, and the real game was about to begin. She changed into a clean white button-down shirt she kept for emergencies, shed the last vestiges of the Waitress, and walked out to meet the man whose empire she was about to dissect. The private lounge at Aperture was a stark contrast to the public dining room. It was Harrison Cole's personal sanctuary within the city, all dark wood, leather, and smoked glass. A single dramatic window showcased the glittering sprawl of the city he had, in many ways, built. He was pacing when Matilda entered, having shed her apron and uniform jacket for a simple, professional white shirt. He had a glass of scotch in his hand, which he hadn't touched. "Dr. Hayes, please," he said, gesturing to one of the leather armchairs. "Drink? Water?" "Nothing, thank you, Mr. Cole," she replied, sitting down. She didn't cross her legs. She sat with the grounded posture of someone who was here to work. The power dynamic had been completely inverted. He was no longer the billionaire patron. He was the subject of an audit. I feel I must apologize again," he began, running a hand through his thick silver hair. "Brenda, she's gone. That was inexcusable." "It was informative," Matilda said, her voice neutral. "It speaks to the environment of entitlement you've cultivated, or at least tolerated." Harrison flinched, but he nodded. "Fair. A fair assessment. My focus has been elsewhere, on the Phoenix project." He sat down opposite her, leaning forward, his eyes desperate. "You said the board hired you. Which members? Was it Whitehall?" "My contract is with the board as a whole, Mr. Cole. My fiduciary duty is to the company, not to any single member." Of course, he said, rubbing his face. "They think I'm stealing, don't they? They see the $300 million gap in the Phoenix budget, they see the cost overruns, and they think I'm skimming. It is a logical, if preliminary, hypothesis," Matilda stated. "A passion project, underfunded, with a charismatic CEO who has unilateral control. It's a classic setup for executive malfeasance." Harrison looked her dead in the eye. "I'm not stealing, Dr. Hayes. I'm being robbed. The Phoenix project is my legacy. It's a net-zero carbon capture system that could save us. I've sunk half my personal fortune into it, trying to plug the holes." Matilda watched him. There was no artifice in his voice now. The fatigue she'd seen earlier was the genuine stress of a man trying to keep his ship from sinking. "You've put your own money in?" she asked. This was new information. $80 million? Last month? A quiet transfer from my private holding company, he admitted. "I didn't tell the board. They would have seen it as a sign of failure. And, well, Whitehall would have used it as leverage to have me ousted." This was a major piece of the puzzle. You're plugging a leak with your own cash, without knowing where the leak is coming from? "I know who it is," Harrison said, his voice dropping to a low growl. "Or I'm almost certain. Gavin Reed. My CFO." Matilda's face remained impassive, but inside her mind was racing. Her own investigation had pointed squarely at Reed. "Why do you suspect him?" "The $300 million isn't gone," Harrison explained, standing up to pace again. "It's been reallocated into a series of new opaque supplier contracts for the Phoenix project. Shell companies, every last one. They provide rare earth minerals, advanced polymers, all at a 300% markup. Every contract, every payment, has Reed's signature on it. But the corporate structures are ghosts. The money goes in, and it vanishes. And you, as CEO, can't stop your own CFO?" Harrison let out a bitter laugh. "Reed is a genius, a financial wizard. He's also embedded. He structured these deals so that to cancel them would trigger a default clause that would kill the entire Phoenix project overnight. He's got me in a box. If I fire him, he triggers the defaults. If I accuse him without ironclad proof, he'll sue me and the company for defamation, and the board, led by Whitehall, who likes Reed, will side with him. They think he's the fiscal conservative reining in my passion project. They don't see that he's the one gutting it." Here, then, was the real story. Not a simple case of a CEO skimming, but a complex corporate war fought with balance sheets and shell companies. "So you're paralyzed," Matilda summarized. "Yes," Harrison said, his voice raw. "I'm the captain of a ship that's being scuttled from the inside, and the crew thinks I'm the one drilling the holes. The board hired you to find me guilty. But I'm telling you, Dr. Hayes, you're a forensic accountant. Follow the money. It all leads to Reed." Matilda was silent for a long moment. She was a woman who trusted data, not emotion. But Harrison Cole's confession, especially the $80 million of his own money, was a data point she couldn't ignore. "Mr. Cole," she said, her voice finally losing its icy edge, "I am not here to find you guilty. I am here to find the truth. You say the board hired me to target you. That's not entirely accurate. A specific faction, led by Mr. Whitehall, did push for the audit. They provided me with your file. But my mandate remains. I follow the money." She leaned forward. "And you, Mr. Cole, are correct. My investigation has also led me to Gavin Reed." Harrison's head snapped up. "You know? I know that he has 3 offshore accounts that have seen deposits totaling $45 million in the last 6 months. I know he has a gambling habit he conceals through a proxy in Macau. And I know he eats at this restaurant 3 times a week, often with men who I've identified as senior partners from your biggest competitor, Helios Industries." Harrison's face, which had been hopeful, turned dark. "Helios. So he's not just stealing. He's selling me out. He's selling the Phoenix project." "That is my running hypothesis," Matilda said. "He's not just embezzling. He's committing corporate espionage. He's bleeding your project dry and selling the proprietary technology to the competition, all while convincing your board that you are the problem." Harrison Cole sank back into his chair, the full weight of the betrayal hitting him. My God, he's going to destroy everything. "Not if I find the final link," Matilda said. "I have the bank transfers. I have the supplier contracts. I'm missing the why and the how, the direct proof of the data transfer to Helios. Reed is smart. He doesn't use company email. He doesn't take meetings in his office. He takes them here," Harrison said, looking around the room. "At Aperture." "Exactly," Matilda said. "Which is why I'm here." Harrison stared at her, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. You're working here, as a waitress, to get close to Gavin Reed." "He's arrogant," Matilda said, her voice a flat statement of fact. "Arrogant men get sloppy in places where they feel comfortable. They treat the staff as invisible. They take calls they shouldn't. They leave documents on the table while they use the restroom. My apron is the best invisibility cloak in the city. This is incredibly high risk, Dr. Hayes." "The risk is commensurate with the data I'm seeking," she replied. "I've been serving Mr. Reed for 2 weeks. I've learned more from overhearing his one-sided phone calls than I did from 6 weeks of auditing your company's servers. He's careless, he boasts, and his regular Tuesday guest is a man named Paul Jenkins." Harrison's eyes widened. "Jenkins? Paul Jenkins is the head of R&D at Helios Industries." "I know," Matilda said, "and tomorrow night they have a reservation. Table 12. My section. I believe that is when the final exchange is happening. Reed is getting jumpy. Your questions about the budget are making him nervous. He's ready to make his final move and get out." Harrison stood, pacing the room like a caged lion. "We have to stop him. We can have security. We can have the police." "No," Matilda said, her voice sharp, cutting him off. "If we move in now, all we have is a meeting. Circumstantial. Jenkins will claim they were discussing a job offer. Reed will claim the same. The money I've found is hidden behind corporate veils that will take lawyers months to untangle. By then, your tech will be gone, and Helios will have beaten you to market. Then what do? We just let him sell my life's work over dessert? No, Matilda said, a new, harder edge to her voice. We don't just watch, we catch him, red-handed. We need definitive, undeniable proof of the data transfer, a hard drive, a USB key, a verbal confirmation that can be recorded. Harrison stopped pacing. Recorded? Dr. Hayes, that's illegal. So is $300 million of embezzlement and corporate espionage. Matilda shot back. I am not suggesting a wiretap, Mr. Cole. I am a forensic accountant. I don't break the law, but Mr. Reed is a very demanding customer. He always insists on the private booth, table 12, and he always insists on absolute privacy. The staff are told not to approach unless summoned. Which means he feels safe there, Harrison finished, understanding dawning. He feels safe, Matilda agreed. But Aperture is a high-tech facility. The private booths have amenities, integrated sound systems, presentation screens, and if one knows the maintenance codes, integrated audio-visual recording capabilities intended for executive conferences. Harrison's jaw was on the floor. You've hacked the restaurant. I don't hack, Mr. Cole. I conducted a thorough security review of my working environment. The default password was 12 Thrafiahor. It was less a hack and more of an unlocked door. The fatigue was gone from Harrison Cole's face. In its place was a cold, calculating fury. He looked at Matilda, this woman who had seamlessly moved from serving his table to planning a corporate counter-espionage operation. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "From you?" "Nothing," Matilda said, standing up. "I need you to go home, Mr. Cole. I need you to do exactly what you would normally do. Act stressed, act defeated. Call Reed. Yell at him about the budget. Make him more nervous. Make him desperate to close his deal with Jenkins tomorrow." "And you?" "I," Matilda said, "am going to clock out. My shift ended 20 minutes ago. I will be back here tomorrow at 5 p.m. I will serve Mr. Reed his usual steak, medium rare. I will pour Mr. Jenkins his ludicrously expensive wine, and I will get the evidence your board needs to not only clear your name, but to send Gavin Reed to prison for a very, very long time." Harrison watched her, a sense of awe cutting through his anger. He had been fighting a war of shadows, and he had just found his greatest general in the one place he never would have looked. "Dr. Hayes," he said, holding out his hand. She looked at it, then took it. Her grip was firm, her hand steady. "My company and my legacy are in your hands," he said. "Don't worry, Mr. Cole," Matilda replied, releasing his hand. "They're in good hands. I'm a professional." She turned and walked to the door, a picture of quiet confidence. "Oh, and Dr. Hayes?" he called out. She paused, turning back. The 280 bottle of wine that that I spilled on you. Please put it on my tab, along with a 500% tip." A very small, very brief smile touched Matilda's lips. "Of course, Mr. Cole. I'll be sure to add it to the bill." She left the lounge, leaving the billionaire alone in the room. He walked to the window, looking out over the city. For the first time in months, he felt something other than despair. He felt the sharp, cold thrill of the fight. The game was afoot, and he had the most unlikely and most brilliant of allies. The next 24 hours were the longest of Harrison Cole's life. He did exactly as Matilda had instructed. He went back to his penthouse, not to sleep, but to rage. He called Gavin Reed at 7 a.m., a call so full of genuine sleep-deprived fury that it needed no acting. "Gavin, I'm looking at the third quarter projections for Phoenix," Harrison roared. "What is this $300 million black hole? You're a bean counter, so count the damn beans. I want a full audit on my desk by Monday, or you're finished." On the other end of the line, Gavin Reed's blood ran cold. "Harrison, I've explained. These are essential supplier contracts. The materials are volatile. If you break the contracts—" "I don't care about the contracts, Gavin. I care about the cost. Fix it or I'll find someone who can." Harrison slammed the phone down. He sent a company-wide email announcing an immediate freeze on all non-essential spending. He called an emergency board meeting for Monday, with the Phoenix project's financial irregularities as the only item on the agenda. He created the perfect storm of panic. He was applying pressure, just as Matilda had asked, turning the safe deal Reed had into a ticking time bomb. Meanwhile, Matilda Hayes arrived for her 5 p.m. shift at Aperture. She was, once again, just Matilda the waitress. She polished glasses. She memorized the specials. She folded napkins. But in her mind, she was running checklists. The recording system for Table 12 was active. She had tested it using her cell phone. The audio was crystal clear. The video feed, routed through the restaurant's secure server, was being fed directly to a private encrypted cloud storage she controlled. The restaurant's Wi-Fi, notoriously spotty, was not a factor. She had, the night before, plugged in a small 5G cellular router disguised as a power adapter in the service closet. She was ready. At 7:58 p.m., Gavin Reed arrived. He looked terrible. His suit was wrinkled, he was sweating, and he was constantly checking his phone. "Good evening, Mr. Reed," Matilda said, approaching him with the menu. "Matilda, yes, fine. Table 12. My guest will be here any minute. Get me a double scotch. Now." "Right away, Mr. Reed." She delivered the drink. He downed half of it in one gulp. At 8:05 p.m., Paul Jenkins from Helios Industries arrived. He was the opposite of Reed, calm, collected, and wearing a suit that cost more than Matilda's car. "Gavin, you look stressed," Jenkins said as he sat down. "You'd be stressed too," Reed muttered. "Cole is on the warpath. He's calling for a full audit. He's threatening to fire me." Matilda approached the table. "Good evening, gentlemen. Can I get you something to start?" Jenkins smiled at her, a wolfish, dismissive smile. "We'll need a bottle of the 05 Petrus, and then we'll need to be left alone for at least an hour." "Is that understood?" "Perfectly, sir," Matilda said. "A fine choice." She retrieved the $5,000 bottle of wine, presented it, and poured it with a steady hand. Her fingers brushed the underside of the table, where she had, an hour before, affixed a tiny secondary audio recorder as a backup. One can never be too careful. "Your wine, gentlemen. Please let me know if you require anything else." She backed away, melting into the shadows of the dining room. She took her station at a service stand just outside the booth, close enough to intervene, far enough to be invisible. She pulled out her phone, which was now streaming the live audio feed from the booth. She polished a wine glass, her face a mask of placid service, and listened. "So the timeline is moved up, Paul. I can't wait until Monday." Reed's voice was sharp with panic. "Cole is bringing in the dogs. I'm telling you, I need to be out. Tonight." "Calm down, Gavin," Jenkins's smooth voice replied. "Panicked men make mistakes. The deal is the deal. We agreed on the final transfer upon prototype confirmation. The prototype works. I sent you the simulation data. Simulation data is not the same as the core algorithm, Gavin. We're paying you a fortune for the Phoenix algorithm itself, the source code, all of it. We need it, and we need it tonight. Do you have it?" There was a pause. Matilda held her breath. "Yes," Reed hissed. "It's here, on this." A small click sound, like a USB drive being placed on the table. "It's everything. The capture mechanics, the energy conversion matrix, everything that makes Phoenix work. It cost Cole $1 billion, and it's all yours." "And the price?" Jenkins asked. $20 million. Transferred to the usual account, tonight, as soon as I give you this drive." "That was the deal," Jenkins agreed. "Let me just verify." Matilda heard the faint tapping of a laptop keyboard. This was it. The moment of the sale. "It looks... Yes, the file structure seems correct," Jenkins said. "All right, Gavin. You've done well. The transfer will be initiated from our Geneva office as we speak. It should be in your account within the hour. Your new life awaits." "Thank God," Reed breathed, the relief palpable in his voice. "I'm a dead man if Cole finds." "He won't find anything," Jenkins said. "By the time he realizes the data is gone, Helios will already have filed the patents. He'll be ruined, and you'll be on a beach." "To ruining Harrison Cole," Reed said, his voice stronger now. "To progress," Jenkins corrected him. Matilda stopped polishing the glass. She had it. She had the verbal confirmation. She had the file transfer. She had the entire conspiracy, wrapped up with a $5,000 bottle of wine. But it wasn't enough. Having the recording was one thing. Having the drive was another. The law loved physical evidence. She needed to get that USB drive. She looked at the table. Reed and Jenkins were celebrating, pouring more wine. Reed, in his relief, was drinking quickly. She formulated a plan. A risky one. She pulled a small vial of concentrated, food-safe emetic from her locker, a tool she kept for extreme data extraction scenarios. She poured a few drops into a fresh glass of water. She waited another 10 minutes until Reed was 3 glasses of wine in and flushed with victory. She approached the table. "Gentlemen, my apologies," she said, stepping into the booth. "Mr. Reed, you have an urgent call from your office. They said it's a server emergency." Reed, panicked again, shot up. "What? Now? Damn it!" He grabbed his phone and rushed out of the booth, heading for the lobby. Jenkins, annoyed, sat alone. "More water, sir?" Matilda asked, seamlessly placing the new glass of water at his setting. "Fine," he muttered, distracted, looking at the USB drive still on the table. As if on cue, Reed's voice echoed from the lobby. "There's no one on the line. What is this?" Matilda was already walking away. Reed stormed back to the table. "That was a prank call. What the hell is—" "Oh, shut up and drink your wine, Gavin," Jenkins snapped, tired of his partner's nerves. "It's done." Reed, flustered and angry, sat down. He saw the new glass of water Matilda had left. He was sweating, his mouth dry from the scotch and wine. He picked up the glass and drained it in 3 large gulps. Matilda watched from her station. She counted. 1 minute. 2 minutes. At 2 minutes and 30 seconds, Gavin Reed's face went a sickly, greenish white. He put a hand to his stomach, then to his mouth. Oh God," he gurgled. The fish. Must have been." He stumbled from the booth, making a desperate run for the men's room. Paul Jenkins, looking utterly disgusted, was left alone at the table. He sighed, picked up the USB drive, and was about to slip it into his pocket. "Sir?" He looked up. Matilda was there, holding a silver tray. "You have a smudge on your screen," she said, gesturing to his open laptop. "Allow me." She leaned in, a cleaning cloth in her hand. Her other hand, the one holding the tray, moved with lightning speed. As she wiped the screen with an exaggerated motion, her tray hand hovered over the table, sweeping the USB drive into her palm and sliding it under the tray in a single, fluid motion perfected by years of clearing crumbs. "There we are, sir. Good as new," she said, pulling back. Jenkins, who had been focused on her cloth, just nodded. "Thank you. Now please leave us alone." "Of course, sir." Matilda walked away. In her hand, hidden beneath a linen napkin on her tray, was the drive, the billion-dollar key to the Phoenix project. She walked straight to the staff exit, hung up her apron, and disappeared into the night, the audio of the entire confession still streaming to her cloud. The trap had snapped shut. The emergency board meeting on Monday morning was a slaughter. The room was vibrating with tension. Harrison Cole sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of stone. Mr. Whitehall, the skeptical board member, was looking smug, convinced this meeting was to announce the end of Harrison's Phoenix folly. Gavin Reed, miraculously recovered from his food poisoning, sat to Harrison's right, shuffling papers, still trying to project an air of calm control. "Thank you all for coming," Harrison began, his voice flat. "As you know, we have been facing significant financial headwinds on the Phoenix project, a discrepancy of $300 million. I was concerned. The board was concerned. So we hired an external auditor to find the truth." Whitehall sniffed. "And what did this auditor find, Harrison? That your pet project is a black hole, that your leadership has been—" "What she found," Harrison cut in, his voice dropping, "was treason. The room went cold. "Gavin," Harrison said, turning to his CFO, "you've been a busy man." Gavin Reed forced a laugh. "Harrison, I don't know what you mean. The supplier contracts, a new voice said, "are all fraudulent, every last one." The doors to the boardroom opened. Dr. Matilda Hayes walked in. She was not in a waitress uniform. She was wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue power suit, her hair down, her eyes radiating an icy confidence that commanded the room. She carried a slim aluminum briefcase. Gavin Reed's face went white. He recognized her. You're the waitress from Aperture. What is this? Harrison, this is a joke." "She's not a waitress, Gavin," Harrison said. "She is Dr. Matilda Hayes, and this is her report." Matilda placed her briefcase on the table and opened it. She didn't pull out papers. She pulled out a small USB drive, the same one from the restaurant, and plugged it into the room's main projector. "Gavin Reed," Matilda began, her voice filling the room. "For the last 10 months, you have systematically embezzled $300 million from Coal Dynamics by routing payments through a network of 22 shell corporations based in 3 different countries, all of which are secretly owned by you." "This is an outrage, slander," Reed sputtered, starting to rise. "Please sit down, Mr. Reed," Matilda said, and her voice had such authority that he did. "That is simple fraud. What's worse is the corporate espionage." She clicked a button. An audio file began to play. The room filled with the sounds of Aperture, the clinking of glasses, and Gavin Reed's own voice. Audio. "It's here. On this. It's everything. The capture mechanics. Everything that makes Phoenix work. We're paying you a fortune. 20 million. Transferred to the usual account." Gavin Reed looked like he had seen a ghost. He was hyperventilating. Mr. Whitehall's smug expression had melted into one of pure, unadulterated shock. "That," Matilda said, stopping the recording, "was Mr. Reed 2 nights ago, selling the entirety of the Phoenix project source code to Paul Jenkins, the head of R&D at Helios Industries." She held up the USB drive. "And this is the drive, containing all of your proprietary data, Mr. Cole. I took the liberty of returning it." Harrison Cole looked at Gavin Reed. There was no anger left, just a profound, cold disappointment. "Gavin." "Why?" Reed just shook his head, burying his face in his hands. "He was leveraged," Matilda answered for him. "Mr. Reed has significant gambling debts to the tune of $12 million owed to a syndicate in Macau. They were squeezing him. He started stealing to pay them, and when he couldn't steal fast enough, Helios Industries, who likely orchestrated the debt in the first place, offered him a way out. Sell them the Phoenix project, and they'd clear his ledger and make him rich." She closed her briefcase. The full report, including the transfer logs from Helios, the offshore account statements, and a copy of this recording, has been sent to the SEC and the District Attorney's Office. They are, I believe, waiting for Mr. Reed in the lobby. As if on cue, the doors opened again, revealing 2 uniformed police officers and 2 detectives in suits. Gavin Reed didn't even fight. He stood up, a broken man, and put his hands out. He was escorted from the room in silence. The board was speechless. Mr. Whitehall, pale, finally spoke. "Mr. Cole, Harrison, I had no idea. I thought you—" "I know what you thought, Whitehall," Harrison said. He stood up, taking his place at the head of the table. The power had fully returned to him. "The Phoenix project is secure. The stolen funds. Dr. Hayes, we are already in the process of seizing Mr. Reed's assets and the shell accounts," Matilda said. "We expect to recover nearly 90 cents on the dollar. The damage is contained." Harrison Cole looked at Matilda Hayes. The woman who had served him water endured humiliation, and then, in 48 hours, saved his entire legacy. "Dr. Hayes," he said, his voice thick with gratitude, "I believe Coal Dynamics has an opening for a new chief financial officer. A permanent one. Name your price." Matilda smiled, a genuine smile this time. She picked up her briefcase. "Thank you, Mr. Cole, but I'm an auditor. I'm a cleaner. The mess is clean." She walked to the door. "My final invoice will be on your desk this afternoon. It will be substantial." She paused at the door and looked back at him. "And Mr. Cole, don't tolerate vipers in your circle. Not even the pretty ones." She was gone. Harrison Cole stood alone in his boardroom, the stunned silence of his board members behind him. He looked at the USB drive in his hand. He had his company back. He had his legacy back, all because one woman understood that sometimes, to see the truth, you have to be the one person nobody bothers to look at. And there you have it. A story that proves the quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. Matilda Hayes wasn't just a waitress. She was a master, wearing a uniform of invisibility. She reminded a billionaire that true power isn't about what you own, but what you see, and that you should never underestimate the person pouring your coffee. They might just own the bank. What did you think of Matilda's incredible unmasking? Have you ever witnessed someone being totally underestimated, only to see them turn the tables in a shocking way? Let us know your own stories and your thoughts on this one in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you love stories about justice, hidden identities, and sweet, sweet revenge, make sure to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel. We have a new story coming your way very soon, and you won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching.